Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon as well, I guess, depending on wherever in the world you happen to be. My name's Will Blake, and I'll be speaking to you today, doing a bit more of a deeper dive into Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax standards. This is the third session in our occasional series on Wi-Fi 6. The first two sessions are a little higher positioned, and now we're going to get a little bit deeper into the technology as per your request. So I'm going to assume that you already have some knowledge of 802.11ax, Wi-Fi 6. Going to dig a little bit into why it's different, what all the new capabilities mean. Try not to get too down into the weeds. I'm certainly not going to talk about RF physics or any of that sort of stuff, but I think it's important that you have an understanding of the key features and the impact you're going to have on making your Wi-Fi network much more efficient than it probably currently already is. So, moving right on. Also, please, as Tawny mentioned, ask any questions in the chat panel. I'll take regular breaks and just check in and see if there's any outstanding questions that we need to answer. So please make it interactive as we can. So quick recap, what is Wi-Fi 6? Well, it's the 6th generation of Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is something that's been around for 20 years now. It's not a new technology, and each new iteration brings some new capabilities, and Wi-Fi 6 itself, also called 802.11ax, and sometimes referred to as high efficiency wireless, is a significant difference to 802.11ac wave 1 and 2. It's not just the next, well, it is the next generation, but it brings a lot more capability, let's say, compared with the move from 11n to 11ac. So just quickly on terminology, 802.11ax is the standard, defined by the IEEE, and Wi-Fi 6 is the name given by the Wi-Fi Alliance. I think mostly because the alphabet soup of 802.11 was getting so long, we needed to simplify that. The 6th generation made sense. Just a quick review on where we're up to on the standards front. So remembering that Wi-Fi Alliance is the industry group that certifies interoperation between devices. So if you get that little Wi-Fi sticker on your device, that means it's got Wi-Fi Alliance certification, and the infrastructure and the clients are guaranteed to work together within the framework of the functionality that they test. So just going back in time, the evolution from Wave 2 was around 2015, 2016. A few years ago, 802.11ac came out. Towards the end of last year, we had the first Wi-Fi 6 consumer APs, and then we started to see some enterprise APs enter the market. So you might ask, what's the difference between a consumer AP and an enterprise AP? Well, an enterprise AP has a lot more to deal with. The consumer AP is typically, stuck in the lounge room of your house and doesn't have a lot of clients to deal with, whereas enterprises, different scenario, you've got to deal with radio resource management, managing channels, power levels, roaming, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot more capability and functionality goes into an enterprise AP. First Wi-Fi clients were announced, sort of Samsung Galaxy S10 really was the first one. We're starting to see more and more come through now, and we're starting to see what we would call enterprise class access points, as opposed to the entry ones, which typically use the first available common Wi-Fi 6 chipset. Now we're starting to get hardware differentiation and more capability into the AP. So that's where we sit now. Just a few weeks ago, the Wi-Fi Alliance started and announced their certification program. So you probably saw some of that in the press. But the actual standard itself, the 802.11ax standard, hasn't been finalised yet. So that won't happen until sometime next year. Kind of similar sort of thing happened with, I think it was 802.11n, where the Wi-Fi Alliance started certifying devices before the standard was fully ratified. Really what that means in practice is that we're good to go with Wi-Fi 6. there won't be any changes, well, at least no changes anticipated on the hardware side, so you won't need new hardware no matter what happens with the standard. So as I mentioned, clients are already here. So if you had a Samsung Galaxy S10 running on a Wi-Fi 6 network, you can see that little icon there with a little 6. So that shows that it's on a Wi-Fi 6 network. Interestingly, the Apple latest iPhone also supports Wi-Fi 6, but they chose not to put that little 6 in the icon. So you won't necessarily see or prove that it's on a Wi-Fi 6 network depending on the client and what they choose to put in their GUI. Right, so what's the big deal with Wi-Fi 6? So let's dig into the standards a bit more and talk about what are the technologies underlying Wi-Fi 6, how is it different, and what does it mean to your network performance? You know, we can go a bit faster, so higher data rates supported. 1024 QAM, so we can get, when you do the math, we can get up to 9.6 gig per radio. And with a single device or a single spatial stream, 1.2 gigs. We can support up to 8 spatial streams, or at least the standard can, in a single AP. So that's the math. Single device with one spatial stream could do 1.2 gig, times that by 8 to get 9.6. Now just remember that that is very much a theoretical top speed, and that's not what you're going to get in practice. And we'll talk about why as we dig into some of these technologies. There's some new modulation capabilities which allow more throughput, so 3 to 4 times. I'll talk about why in a minute. So we get more throughput, more capacity, and gains for all different client types. So we're making a much better use of the radio spectrum. And because of that, we can reduce latency and make greater reliability. So, you know, when you think about wireless becoming very much the primary form of network connectivity now, so people are tending to use wireless for everything rather than wired. So voice, video, latency, sensitive applications, we need to make them work as well as we can. And there's some limitations with 802.11ac and previous generation wireless. So we'll talk about that too. Also battery life. So this becomes important for any handheld device, IoT, etc. So we can do a lot more with battery to improve power efficiency, which is important, like I said, especially for IoT and other things. So much more capability there. There's a white paper link down the bottom there that you can dig in if you want to find out more about that. But really what it's about is efficiency. Right? We've got a finite amount of spectrum available and we want to make the best use of it that we can. And we want to make it better for all users. So this is what I was talking about, the speed. It's not really so much about top speed, it's about good speed and high speed for all users and giving everyone a fair shot at that spectrum. It's not real good if I could go at 9.6 gigabits a second, but as soon as the second client joined, it went down to 100K, for example. Now, obviously, that's an extreme, but we don't want to have that happen. So really, Wi-Fi 6 is about making best possible use of airtime efficiency. You know, we want clients to connect fast because the faster they can connect, the quicker they can transmit the data they need to and get off channel and make channel available to everybody else. We can do things around frame aggregation and to help throughput, but with existing mechanisms, if there's lots of small packets, there's a lot of inefficiencies, and we'll explore why. You also got to remember that current standards are only one person can talk at any one time. So the more and more people there are, or the more and more clients there are within a given Wi-Fi cell, the longer they have to wait for some free airtime to transmit. So that has a corresponding impact on jitter latency. So what can we do? There's 4 key things that we need to work on. So one is data rates. So how can I go faster? And the answer there is improving modulation. So we can go to 1024 QAM. We've got a number of spatial streams. So how do we reuse them better? So we have more spatial streams, we have multi-user MIMO, and we have BSS colouring. Don't worry too much about those terms. I'm going to go into detail about what they mean. Within the bandwidth, we have these things called subcarriers and resource units, so we're going to dig into those. They're important as well. and protocol overhead. So remember, when I'm sending packets, there's always some management frame stuff that has to happen, beacons, coordination, etc. So how do I improve the efficiency there as well? Right, so this is a bit of a reference slide. These are the things we're going to dig into today. We're going to talk about OFDMA, multi-user MIMO, parallel processing, QAM, target wake time, and the impact that all this stuff has on improving your wireless network. And it makes big improvements. Let me tell you. So OFDMA, what's that all about? Let's just start with OFDM. So this is what we use for previous generation wireless standards. So 802.11, AC, Wave 1, 2, NG, AB. Well, actually, all those ones down to G, we kind of changed a bit earlier on. But basically, the concept here is for a given channel, in this example, a 20 megahertz channel, we split that channel up into subcarriers. So these are little slices, and we can send multiple bits of data at once, one on each subcarrier, effectively. So they're split in 312 kilohertz apart in, let's say, 802.11 AC. And then there's a guard spacing in between those subcarriers to avoid interference. Right, so when you do the math, with a 20 megahertz channel, there's 64 subcarriers we can do there. But remember that only one person, one client, I should say, I shouldn't stop calling them persons, one client can talk at any one time. So with OFDMA, we've shortened the spacing. So there's more carriers, up to 256 for that same 20 megahertz channel. So we've made them much shorter. And we've increased the symbol time. So we've got 4 times as many carriers. So we've made the carrier space shorter, and we've increased, well, not we, the standard has increased the symbol time by 4 times as well. So there's kind of a relationship there. So that the increased time is important as well, because that makes it more efficient. We're on time a bit longer, less chance of errors, all that sort of stuff. It's not strictly one for one. It's a 32% improvement when you do the math, but still significant. We still need to make allowance for synchronization between transmitting and receiving, which is this thing about pilot subcarriers. And there's some other things, guard intervals and stuff like that. But just keep in mind that there's a lot more data, 4 times as amount data we can send on one given channel. And we can split that up further into these things called resource units. All right, so this becomes important as well when we think about IoT, range, and other things. So we can have different size subcarriers to send different amounts of data to different numbers of clients. And they can be different speeds, different coding rates, if you look at the green there, different control information. I can kind of slice and dice that carrier into different ways, which becomes extremely useful, as we'll see in a minute. This is an example here, right? How can we do things more efficiently? What's the difference between OFDM and OFDMA? So in this example, on the left-hand side, let's imagine I've got a 20 megahertz wide channel and I've got 8 clients. Right? Each client gets one time slot to send whatever it is they choose to send, and they have the whole channel bandwidth available to them, so all those carriers. And they just go and send whatever it is. So, you know, it's going to be different types of data, which is going to take up a different amount of space. And when they want to send the next bit, each of these clients has to wait till their next time slot opportunity. Okay, so when you look at this, all that white space is just wasted airtime. Nobody else can use it. It's inefficient, right? But this is the way it currently works. With OFDMA, we can assign users into these resource units for different users, and we can combine data on one time slice. All right, so in this example, we're combining all those different 8 clients into ways that they can fit, which is coordinated between the access point and the client or the station. Okay, so if you chose the orange guy, user 5 who's sending some data, and you compare OFDM versus OFDMA, right, for that given amount of time, those are 8 time slots, he has sent 4 times the amount of data than he would have in OFDM. Another way of looking at this is, if I take the truck scenario, right, imagine I'm doing deliveries and I get something sent to my house. Well, they dedicate a truck just to deliver a package to my house, no matter how big the package is. So what does that mean to the highway? It's totally congested with trucks, and there's a huge amount of overhead because I've got this truck and this massive thing carrying my one little letter, for example, if it's a very small packet. Obviously, if I fill the whole truck up, then it's much more efficient. So with OFDMA, not only can I fill the whole truck up with various customers' data, I can also combine trailers together. So I'm getting a huge efficiency gain in my management overhead, my truck, my puller, and combining all these packets and filling all the FedEx carriers up. So instead of just a truck dedicated me to deliver a package to my house, I'm doing the whole suburb all at once. But hopefully that's clear that it's much more efficient use of the spectrum, and really that's what it's all about. And to bring it all home, this is, I think the money slide, right? If you look at Cisco's best practice in this example, this is some research Cisco's done, is that kind of orange dotted line, right? So when it comes to voice and video and latency sensitive applications, we want latency to be below 100 milliseconds. And once you start increasing client count over about 35, it starts getting really bad really fast. So this is why, if you ever look at sort of Cisco best practice design guides for voice, we'll say try not to have more than 25-ish clients attached to any AP at any one time. This is why. But if you look at Wi-Fi 6, you can see the increase curve is much flatter, and it's still well within the bounds of Cisco best practice at 80 clients. So that's 2.5, 3 times the amount of clients, and we're still getting completely acceptable voice and video capability. So the ability to deliver real-time applications over wireless at large scale in very high density environments is here now, and it probably wasn't before. We talked a little bit about the 1024 QAM. What does that mean in practice? Here's the reference slide. I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but if you want to work out how to get the numbers, if you go to MCS 11 and you can do 1024 QAM, that's where you get the 1.2 gig. Now you do need 160 megahertz wide channel, probably not there in reality, but certainly you're going to get, as per the slide, significant performance impact over what you could get with AC for a single client. We've done some sort of anecdotal testing just internally. You can get MCS 11 at a reasonable distance from one of the Cisco latest 9120 AP, so it's not like you have to be standing directly under it. Probably within 5 meters or so, not too noisy environment, you seem to be able to get MCS 11 sort of rate. So pretty doable, that bottom line, I would say, in reality. So just before I move on, I'm just going to throw over to Mark, who's on the Q&A panel, just to see if there's any questions on that OFDMA stuff. Mark.
Hey, Will, can you hear me okay?
Yep, gotcha.
So pretty quiet on the Q&A front, so I certainly want to encourage everybody to to get typing their questions, so I can call them out for you or answer live. I thought, though, I did just want to kind of reiterate one of the points that you made there, particularly on that last slide. Historically, when we've looked at data rates, you get that kind of top rate that's on the, the sticker on the box, but it always ties into signal noise ratio. So, I can only get that top rate assuming that I've got the best possible quality signal. What makes AX so interesting, going beyond just the fact that we've now got an increase in the modulation scheme and data rate, really is what you talked about with OFDMA, that this idea that now I can more effectively share that airtime. Because, if you think about it, even if I've got that max data rate, if I'm streaming 4K video from Netflix, I'm still not going to be filling that pipe to capacity. And so being able to share among multiple clients, that is really what's going to be a game changer. So thank you very much, Chris. We did just get one question while I was talking.
Yay, Chris.
And so good question there, in terms of how Wi-Fi 6 will cooperate with older clients. And Will, I might give you that one as kind of both sides of that question. How will Wi-Fi 6 clients work with older APs, but also how will the Wi-Fi 6 APs work with older clients?
Yeah, good point. So it's designed, the standard's designed with full backwards compatibility. So all the older previous generation capabilities all fully supported, so that will all work. In practice, what it means is that the AX capable APs and clients will work together as best they can in the environment they work within. So what I mean by that is if you've got a number of AX clients, then they will take advantage of some of these capabilities that we talk about today. But obviously, if I have a client that doesn't support it, it won't be able to. So you'll get a mix. So it'll certainly be more efficient than currently. Will it be as efficient as it could be? No. But over time, and I think pretty quickly, because there are some significant benefits with Wi-Fi 6, you're going to see more and more chipsets come out. More and more client devices supporting Wi-Fi 6. So I know that Intel have just released some chipsets. So once they make their way into, large vendor laptops and those sort of things, then I think you'll see uptake pretty quick, and certainly will improve over time. All right, so I'm going to keep going on. So as we discussed, OFDMA allows for multiple users to transmit at the same time, which is what we were talking about before. But there's more, because we have this thing called multi-user MIMO. So now we're kind of doing multi-user squared, if you like. And now this is an animation of my head exploding, because now it's starting to get complicated. I don't know how well that translates onto the WebEx, but hopefully you get the idea. So multi-user MIMO is not a brand new concept. We had it in 802.11ac Wave 2. So that was kind of the key, or one of the key differences between AC Wave 1 and Wave 2. Each client could send channel state information about how to best to beamform it. Challenge there was there wasn't many Wi-Fi Wave 2 clients, so wasn't really used in anger, I would say. Not many deployments did we see of Wave 2. Key note here is that we're using the additional antenna, in this case, in this example, the fourth antenna to do beamforming. And the concept is here that we can steer the beam, the Wi-Fi signal, towards clients, and we can also steer a null towards other clients. So we can send to multi-users at one time from the AP to the client downstream. So a couple of things that Wi-Fi 6 has brought to the party. It's a mandatory requirement. That's probably the most important thing. And we've got more transmitters to play with. So instead of 4, we can go up to 8. And there's tighter coordination between the stations, i.e. the clients, and the APs themselves. So there's sounding information we get back from the APs from the clients about what they support. And so then the AP is doing a whole lot of tricky math to understand how to create groups of like users and steer the beams towards them in the most efficient way. Again, we can have different groups of clients supporting different capabilities and still cater for them all over the air in the same time. And we can take advantage of resource units and all the channel stuff we spoke about earlier to really, again, boost up the efficiency. So this is what we're talking about here. There's a couple of other things, worth mentioning here, but effectively we can steer to multiple users, as I mentioned before, assign resource units and send a beam to multiple groups at the same time, and ditto, they can send stuff back to us. So again, we're just making much more efficient use of the air. And if you combine that with, if you combine these two things together, OFDMA, multi-user MIMO, they both have a part to play and they both help each other. So, I use that truck scenario for OFDMA. We're packing the truck full every time we're sending the truck onto the road. With multi-user MIMO, we're kind of layering multiple trucks on top of each other. So we're making much more efficient use of the road as well at the same time. So that's kind of that scenario of filling the truck and having multiple carriers behind it. So each have significant benefits. Obviously latency is much better. We're making better use of the bandwidth with OFDMA. That comes into its own really for low bandwidth, small packets. Multi-user MIMO, high bandwidth applications, we can send traffic to and from multiple clients simultaneously. So 2 good things. The next step after that is BSS colouring, spatial reuse. So you'd probably be aware that with 802.11ac, we stopped using the 2.4 gig band, mostly because there was only 3 non-overlapping channels and there was a lot of co-channel interference. And remembering that if clients or APs hear radio energy on that channel, they back off for a random amount of time, basically listen for clear before talk. So everyone's all trying to talk at once. It's the classic, I'm in the pub, it's really crowded, everybody's yelling and I can't hear anything. That's the problem. To get around that, we did things like, directional antennas, lots of detailed Wi-Fi design. It got complicated and tricky to make work well. If you look at that, this is kind of a pictorial example of that. What is that listen for clear before send threshold? As I mentioned on the previous slide, the default was minus 82 dB, plus or minus a bit. That potentially made the cell really big. So in terms of, if you use this example, a pretty clean RF environment, I could potentially get a neg 82 signal at 200 plus meters away from the AP, which is probably not what I want, because it's going to make, there's too many people inside there. No one's going to get a fair go. High density, everything's just going to collapse. So what did we do? We had a few tools we used. We'd turn off low data rates. So that had the impact of shrinking the cell a lot. Because this, in this 228 meters example, I was probably connecting at 1 megabit a second there. So if we change that to 11, which is kind of our default best practice, we bring it right in. And then we change the RxSOP, which is changing that clear channel assessment threshold. So again, reducing the noise. So we're taking some of those concepts and applying them here. What we're doing with BSS colouring is, just look at the example on the right, that probably makes it easiest. We've got 2 APs near each other on the same channel. In this example, channel 36. And what we do is we assign a color to a given BSS, a basic service set. So when someone comes and joins the station, they learn that color for that particular AP. So the one on the left in this example is green, the one on the right is blue. They're on the same channel. So then when I get clients, let me just build this out a bit. If I get clients that can hear both the packets coming from the different APs on channel 36, well, they adjust their clear channel assessment thresholds so that they favour the colour that they happen to be part of. So the one on the left, the client on the left is on the green colour for channel 36. If he hears radio energy coming from the blue AP on channel 36, above that neg 82 threshold, he'll just ignore it and talk anyway because he knows it's not for him. So really what we're doing here is adjusting the measurement threshold so when it's clear to send to get around the noise floor. That's ultimately the benefit here. And not only that, we can do power detection and adjustments as well. So if clients are able to actively lower their transmit power, then we can further reduce the noise and we can improve efficiency even more because we're less likely to hear traffic not destined for us that happens to be on the same channel. So overall, we're making, again, much more efficient use of the available bandwidth, which is really what this is all about. Hey, Mark, how's that Q&A going? Have you got anything else that's come up?
Actually, yeah, because I'm like racing to type, but you beat me to it, so I'll just say the answer instead. Yep. So, very good question on Wi-Fi 6 support on the particularly the AROS controllers. So one of the things I want to call out there, because the question explicitly mentioned both the 5508 and the 3504. So in terms of Wi-Fi 6 support, and I'm looking specifically at support of the Wi-Fi 6 capabilities as distinct from the Wi-Fi 6 APs. That support with the features is coming with the 8.10 release for AROS, which is due at the end of this month. That is supporting the latest of the AROS controllers, so 3504, 5520, and 8540. Because the 5508 was explicitly called out, I'll just mention the last, that's end of life, the last release for that was the 8.5 release. Anything you want to add in on that point, Will?
Yeah, so the one comment I would make is that we've specifically designed certainly the Cisco later controllers and the Wi-Fi 6 APs to happily interoperate with current environments. So what I mean by that is if you have a 5508 with some APs attached, it needs to be running a late version of 8.5 code, but we can do intercontroller roaming between the 5508 and let's say 9800 running Wi-Fi 6 APs. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you go and salt and pepper Wi-Fi 6 APs amongst the APs that are connected to your 5508. But if you wanted to do a staged deployment and have a floor of a building running Wi-Fi 6 connected to a 9800 and seamless roaming to the different floor which had 5508s and a 3700, for example, and that will all work happily.
And I guess the other point there, just because I may have confused things, so I just want to be really clear on this. So the current 9100 series Catalyst access points, the AX Wi-Fi 6 access points, they are supported on the 8.9 release. However, the Wi-Fi 6 explicit features, that support is coming in the 8.10 release because that is tied to the firmware which actually comes from the chipset manufacturers, and that actually was not ready for prime time when they were released. And this is not a Cisco-specific thing. This is actually an industry thing because we're all beholden to the likes of the Broadcoms and the Marvells and the Qualcomms on the chipset side.
Cool. All right. We've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to have to speed up. I'm slightly behind time. But anyway, so the next one is target wait time. So when you think about the fact that currently when a client wants to talk, it just tries to, well, it assesses the spectrum and sees whether there's a clear spot, and if there isn't, it backs off. So the implication in dense environments is that the client or the station in this example will spend a lot of time trying to talk. So what does that mean? The radio has to wake up, uses more battery, keeps trying, backs off, keeps trying, right? So it's inefficient and chews up battery and not a good use of resources. So because we've got tighter coordination between the access point and the client or the station in this case, we can schedule a wake-up time. So the AP can go, yep, I'm going to wake you up in a year, and then you can tell me what you need to say, and then you can go back to sleep again for another year. So when you think about things like, I don't know, smart electricity meters or things that don't need to send a lot of bandwidth and it's irregular, you know, as it says here, things can stay asleep for up to 5 years, wake up, have a quick chat, and then go back to sleep again. So important for IoT and things like that. On the subject of IoT, there's some enhancements here. One is around range. So one thing I didn't touch on when we were talking about resource units, when it comes to RF energy or sending from a AP or a client, I have got a finite amount of radio energy I can send. So if I send that radio energy over a broad range of frequencies, let's suppose I had a 80 meg wide channel, I've still got the same amount of energy if I had a very narrow single resource unit wide channel. All right, so, you know, channel width, while I can get more data through, it also reduces range because I've only got the same amount of energy and I've got to send it over a much broad range of frequencies. I'm hoping that makes sense here. But if I've got a very narrow band, i.e. a single RU, I've got a lot more energy available to send over that very short width of spectrum, so I can get a lot further. So that, again, that's important when it comes to IoT. So I can get further and I don't have to be on as long. So for IoT devices, significant battery savings, much more efficient use of the time. I'm not giving up a whole channel, all those sorts of things. And also because I've got these different RUs and I can slice my channel up quite in a very granular way, if I'm using other technologies, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Thread, whatever, and I know what channels they're going to use or what RUs they're going to use, I can mark them quiet. I can leave them blank. So this is this third point on the left-hand side here to allow other technologies to operate. So I'm not interfering with them, but still, again, making best possible use of my RF. This is kind of what I'm talking about here, right? So using a single 2 megahertz I can still do 375K, which is ideal for low throughput, low power consumption IoT, and you can see how much of the spectrum I'm using. Imagine if I was doing OFDM and I had to use that whole time slice for a tiny little bit of data. Not good. So this is much better. So it's going to make a significant difference. So they're kind of the key technologies within Wi-Fi 6 as the standard. So one of the things we'd be interested in hearing about, within Cisco, we're very keen on taking all those capabilities within the standard and enhancing them even further and adding more capability. And certainly our latest access points have that. So if you're interested in a subsequent session talking about or exploring what other capabilities Cisco specifically can bring to bear, let us know in the Q&A or chat window and we can look at scheduling that. So what do you need to do to get ready? Well, the question is, what do you have installed today? So, if we're going to do a one-to-one replacement, then let's hope that your network was designed as it should be to begin with. So, we've got some new features. We're going to make more efficient use of the spectrum, but we need to have everything physically in the right place. If we don't get that layer 1 right, then we can't fix it all in software and standards-based tweaks. So as it says here, nothing beats making sure you install it right the first time. Make sure you do a proper assessment and don't assume that everything's right. Generally speaking, if you've done a good design now in your current environment, you should be good to go. So this is just an example to kind of bring that home. 3800 versus Wi-Fi 6. I don't know how well this is coming through. This is just a site survey, I think probably done with a tool like Ekahau. It's pretty much the same. It's pretty much a 1-for-1 swap. And the standard kind of rules of thumb apply. Don't put the APs too close to each other. And an AP every 15 to 20 metres, which works out to be that sort of 250 square metres. Here's just a different example. So this is a worked example. MCS sort of 10 to 11 is what the plan was for, roughly 35% faster than 11AC, and that's just the speed. Then we're talking about the throughput as well, which again, using all these other techniques will be significantly improved overall, especially at scale. So if this was a high density, busy environment, you'd see massive advantages. So, nothing super new, I don't think, really, in terms of design. You still want to design for 5 gig. You still want to do all the sort of stuff you would have done before, but just know that it's going to be significantly better. Also, don't forget your wired infrastructure. So, wireless can now go faster than wired. So what does that mean? You need to start thinking about technologies like MGig and how you're going to get all this data off the APs to wherever it is it needs to go. You also need to power them. Now, the Cisco Wi-Fi 6 APs will actually run under AF power. So 15.4 watts, you can get an AP up and running. Just bear in mind that it won't run full tilt. The radios will go down to 2x2, but still perfectly functional, be able to take advantage of a lot of these capabilities we spoke about today. But the idea here is that you're not necessarily wedded to your switches if you have low-powered switches and you want to move towards Wi-Fi 6. Yeah, we can talk about design and all that sort of stuff at maybe another session, and how to take advantage of certainly the Cisco capabilities. Obviously, with clients, you're just going to see step improvements as more and more legacy clients go off your network and the AX clients come on. As always, ensure the drivers are up to date. Mark mentioned, even on the AP side, there's still driver updates coming out of the chipset vendors, so ditto will apply for the clients. So it's important to make sure all those guys work in step. And some useful tools. Hopefully you already know a whole lot about those. So certainly I'm a Mac user. I use some of Adrian's tools, Wi-Fi Explorers. Pretty cool. There's some Windows equivalent, and on the purchase side, I use Ekahau Pro quite a bit, and it's a great tool for planning and for validation surveys as well. There's a bunch of books. So generally it's cs.co/wireless book/assurance book/SDA book, programmability book, etc. Really good books, easy to read. We're just about out of time, but I just wanted to give Mark a quick minute. Hope you found today useful. As always, we'd love to get some feedback. Happy to run more sessions on whatever you'd like to hear about. Thank you very much for your time today. Mark, how are we going on Q&A? Any outstanding questions we need to tackle before we finish?
No, it looks like you cleared everything out. Thanks a lot, Will. That was a really great session.